Hi everyone, Miss Fleming here. This is the video for the first saxophone part of Grand Galop, the Circus March. We're going to go ahead and start at the beginning, and what I want you to look at is actually at the top of your page it says 1 beat per measure in parentheses. And I'm sure you've talked about this in class, but I'm just going to give you a little refresher. Of course, it's written in 2/4, so there's actually 2 beats per measure. But what this means is that we're going to be feeling it in 1 because it is kind of a dance-like celebratory march, circus march. So I'm just going to count the first 4 bars so that you can get a feel for this. And I'm going to show you with my snapping that we'll be focusing on the macro beats. 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So we're still counting 1, 2, but the pulse will be in beat 1. So when you're doing this with a metronome, make sure you're doing it with the pulse on the macro beat, and then count in between. But we want to get you, I guess, just like acclimated to this so that when we put it in class and Dr. Reiber is conducting in 1, you can follow along without getting lost. All right, so we're just going to count starting at the beginning, and I'm going to count through the first 2 endings from measure 5. So at the top, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So what I want you to focus on here is that when we count, we need to count exactly how the notes are written in the music. So if there's an accent, count with an accent. If there are dynamics written in, make sure to do the dynamics. So at the beginning we start at forte, and there's a lot of forte to mezzo forte, so make sure that you're doing that when you're counting. Because then when we worry about putting it on the instrument, all we have to focus on is the notes, because the rhythm is down, the style is down, we've got everything ready. I'm going to go ahead and play this for you from the top, just through the second ending of this part. I want you to pay special attention to my dynamics, my style, and just the melody line in general. So I just stopped at the pickups to 25 there. Make sure that when you're playing this or when you're practicing this, that you really do as much as you can with dynamics. A great way of figuring out what that sounds like when you're playing it is to record yourself on a phone or a recorder of some sort and play it back, because that's exactly what it's going to sound like to the audience. And that way you can really listen to yourself without hearing all the noise in your mouth when you're playing. And that way you can make adjustments. You can always listen back to older recordings and see how far you've come with your progress. So when you're practicing this first section, the first step that I want you to do is to count it with a metronome. And remember, I would really like it if you could do your metronome on the macro beat, just in 1, so you can start feeling this in 1. But if you can't, that's fine. Please just do whatever you're most comfortable with, whatever you can be the most accurate on. And then after you count with the metronome, I want you to add your fingers. So you're just going to count and finger along with the metronome. After you count and finger with the metronome, then you can put it on a concert F, just to make sure that you're getting the rhythm and the sound to happen at the correct time. And then lastly, that's when we put it on the instrument and add all the musical ideas into it. But really make sure that you're solid on the counting the rhythms first. And remember, we count with the style, we count with the dynamics, we count with the correct rhythms. And I also want you to make sure that you can play it on a concert F accurately before you add the notes, just because if you go ahead and throw the notes on there, then you're having to worry about playing the right note, you're having to worry about the fingerings, you're having to worry about your sound coming out at the right time, and that's just a lot to think about. So now we're going to move on. I just ended on the pickups to measure 25. And if you notice in my playing, I got quite a bit softer. Softer does not mean slower. We don't want to sound sluggish when we're playing this. So really make sure that when you drop dynamics, you still have a lot of energy through the piece. So just to give you an example of what we expect to hear, pickups into 25, I'm going to play it for you. I want you to pay special attention to my dynamics, my style with the accents, and then overall, this should be march-like, but it's also going to sound circusy. It's going to sound like something that you'd hear at a fair or a circus. So I hope that you noticed that when I played that, I really brought out all of the accidentals. For example, your F natural to F sharp in 2 measures before the first ending there. That's very important, so go ahead and crescendo into those. There's not a lot of phrasing in here. I believe the only written phrasing is under that slur in 31 and 32. I also want you to notice that in the first ending it goes back to forte whenever you repeat to 25. A tip here for you is that whenever you're at the end of the first ending and you have to go back to 25 where those repeat signs are, if you're really struggling to find it on the page whenever we're playing through this, and you get to the repeat sign and then you kind of get lost on the page, make sure to grab your pencil and draw a star, circle, measure 25, some signifier that lets you know, hey, this is where I'm supposed to go back to. So now I'm going to move on. I would like you to look ahead to measure 43. Here I have a page turn, so I'm going to have to stop when I'm playing it for you, but I do want to talk about it just a little bit before I give you an example. So if you noticed when I was playing 25 through 43, I immediately dropped down to the piano dynamic. That has to be a pretty big difference because we just played at forte for, I don't know, maybe 16 bars, maybe more than that probably. Yeah, almost 20. So it was forte for almost 20 bars, and then immediately we dropped down to piano. So that has to be a very big difference. But again, quieter does not mean slower. So make sure that you're really pushing your energy through this. And then again, I'm not going to count this section because it's mostly half notes and quarter notes, and I think that you can do that on your own. But I want you to pay special attention to the key change. So the key change is a big deal. We now have all naturals. So now, whereas we started with F sharps being in the key, now everything is natural. So if you see an F on your page, play it as a natural, unless it has an accidental on it. And there's a lot of accidentals in this section. I'm seeing D sharps. There is an F sharp in here. C sharp, D sharp, G sharp, going through all of those. What I want you to do here at 43, since we did change keys, please take your finger with me and find the first note that is affected by this. So we're going to look for our first F natural. So go ahead and scan your music for a second. And just so that I know that we're all on the same page, I hope that you are pointing at measure 49 because that is the first F natural that we have in this section. And again, since this is a part of the key, it's important that we get that correct. It is not an accidental though, even though they have the natural sign written in. That's just a reminder that we have changed keys. So now I think I'm going to play it for you just because I believe you can count it. I have faith in you. And again, whenever you're counting this with a metronome, preferably on macro beats, count finger, play on a concert F, and then put it in context. So again, this is a page turn for me, so I'm going to have to stop playing, but I just want you to pay attention to my style and dynamics. And then here's the page turn. I apologize for that. I hope you could tell that I was playing very piano. And now I'm going to start at measure 49. Remember, it's an F natural. Oh, I'm sorry, that was a mistake on my part. Forget that last note. We're going to go up to 67. I do want to point out that there are a few sections where there aren't any dynamics written in, but I think that we can use our musicianship to kind of make an ebb and flow in the music where we have a big rise and fall. This is probably going to happen a lot around 56. So we have a D natural, E. So we're kind of walking half steps up to that E. Really make sure that you bring out that D sharp without it sticking out too much. I'm going to go ahead and play that. So this is 56. Actually, I'm going to start in 51 just so you can follow along. I have a little bit of spit in my keys, but like I said, just make sure that you're really pushing into that and crescendoing into the E. And then you can come back on that note so that if there are moving lines underneath you, we can hear them. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and go to 67. This is where I accidentally played a wrong note. My apologies, I'm sorry. So we start on a high C. And for this note, I really want you to make sure that you're playing in tune, because the higher we play and the more of us that are on this part, if we're not in tune, it's definitely going to stick out of the ensemble. So anything from A up to that C, I would really like you to work with on using a tuner. Definitely focus on intonation there. So we're not playing it super loud. We want to play it with a beautiful sound. It is still written at piano, so make sure that that doesn't stick out too much. So again, starting at 67, I'm going to go ahead and play this last little bit for you. And it does say small note optional. I think you guys can play the C, but if you're really struggling with it, you can take the A. This is measure 67. All right, so that's kind of cutesy. Again, it's in a circusy feel. It is still a march, so we still need to have a very heavy presence. A very heavy presence on beat 1. So we need to kind of land on those together. That's going to be a good checkpoint when we're with the full ensemble. Everybody's going to be playing a strong beat 1 so that we never get lost. Now I'm going to skip ahead to the section between measures 75 and 83. This rhythm, we're going to count together. I do want to count this rhythm with you. And this is measure 79 through 83. And if you look ahead, we have the exact same rhythm in 87 to 90. And then if you look ahead the next 4 measures, we have almost the exact same rhythm. So it's going to be very helpful to count this one on your own and make sure that you really have it correct. This is going to be a great section to practice on concert F a lot, just to make sure that you're playing all of the accents, because we see a lot of those here. And that there's a lot of emphasis on 1, we're not getting behind the metronome, and we're playing it at a full fortissimo. That does not mean play as loud as you possibly can with ugly noises. It means play as loud as you can with as beautiful of a tone as you can get. So I'm going to count this with you. This is starting at 79. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So notice how I put a lot of emphasis on the accents. I backed away a little bit on the 8th notes, but overall it was pretty loud and strong. Now I'm going to skip ahead to measure 87, and I'm going to count through to 95. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1. So again, here we started a fortissimo. However, at 91, I dropped down to a mezzo forte and crescendoed back up to a fortissimo. We want to make sure that that is clear as day. Everybody needs to hear it. A lot of other people in the ensemble also have this, so it's going to be a little bit easier for us to get it to come out and project to the audience, but make sure that you're really practicing that as extreme as possible at home. I'm going to go ahead and play it starting on 79 just so you can get the notes. So I tried putting a lot of emphasis on the accents without too much space in between them. We don't want them to come out like, but we do want a lot of weight at the beginning. All right, so I'm going to skip ahead to 87 just so we can get through this, and I'm going to go ahead and play it on my instrument just so you can hear this section. And I messed up that rhythm at the end. Let me try that again. This is from 91. So again, we got to drop down to a mezzo forte and crescendo through that. It's going to help with the accents when we bring them out as far as we go, all the way to 95. Now I'm going to look at the very last section, which I'm just going to say pick up to 95 to the end is the last section of the piece, because it's all very similar in style. This kind of sounds like what we did earlier, where it's kind of a chorale. Everybody in the band is going to have different notes in the chord. You're playing this with the flutes and the clarinets, so make sure to listen to them when you play this in the ensemble. But for right now at home, I want you to play this focusing a lot on the accidentals. And again, from 95 all the way to the end, we're marked fortissimo. So that is 3 lines and 2.5 measures of the same dynamic, and that can get really boring. So this is actually giving you a lot of room for self-expression. We're going to find where we need to add musicality, like dynamics. So there should be a lot of growth into the accidentals. Like I said, they shouldn't stick out a lot, but we do need to grow into them, push into them, and then pull back. So I'm going to play this for you, and I hope that you can hear where I'm crescendoing and decrescendoing. If the sound quality on my phone is awful, I apologize, but I hope that you understand what I'm saying when I do ask that you like crescendo into them. Pick up to 95. So again, listen for dynamics. You can go ahead and rewind. If it wasn't clear through the audio, just make sure that you are focusing on bringing those out, making them sound beautiful. Last thing that I would like to point out is the very last note. So I'm sure we've gone over this in class, but I haven't been in class for a while, so I just want to make sure. Earlier we've seen a lot of these accents, but right here we see a housetop accent or a rooftop accent. We call it that because it looks like a little rooftop. So this is very similar to a normal accent where we put a lot of stress on the front of the beat. However, rooftop accents are shorter, and this is a very march-like articulation to have in a piece, especially on the last note. Like I said, it's going to be shorter than a normal accented note, and the composer actually helps us here by writing it as an 8th note with an 8th rest after it. So we're not going to last the whole beat. It is going to sound funny if one saxophone holds over, because every single person in the band is going to be playing beat 2, and we need to match length here. So I'm going to start in measure 119, and I want you to pay special attention to the very last note and how long I hold it. So I do let it ring out into the room a little bit. I'm not gonna cut it off with my tongue. I'm not gonna choke it with my throat here. I don't wanna cut off the sound at all. We're gonna let it ring, but we do stop our air together and put a lot of emphasis on the note. All right, I hope this video was helpful. I hope that you continue to practice and take advantage of this time that you have at home. It's gotta be awesome staying home for the snow days, or ice days, I guess. If you have any questions, let Dr. Reiber know and he can help you. And remember, we always practice with a metronome. For this one, I'd like macro beats. Count with the metronome, count and finger with the metronome, concert F and metronome, and then we put the notes on. So happy practicing, and I hope to see you guys soon.